What do you make of Donald Trump's tweet recently, where he comes out seemingly um, effectively throws everything onto the Europeans, tell the Europeans, hey, you're holding the bag. I think Ukraine will be able to do great. I think they can take back all of their territory. Hell, they can take more territory. And he's like, anyway, I wish all of you well. Like that tweet is amazing to me, right?
Yeah.
So Kalis, who as the audience knows, I have a bit of a crush on, she comes out and points out that they know I lust after her pretty badly. It's horrible. It's shameless. But Kalis comes out and says the quiet part aloud. The EU diplomat warns Trump that Europe can't shoulder Ukraine burden alone. And she points out, in a moment of, I guess, rare clarity, he was the one who promised to stop the killing, so it's not entirely on us. And she also points out, she says, this is what the article is pointing out. While many European officials welcome the more supportive shift, by the way, it was not a more supportive shift. The Wall Street Journal even points out that no policy has changed at all. It says towards Ukraine, they caution that Trump might be suggesting that he intends to pull back American involvement and absolve Washington of responsibility. That's not a suggestion. That was literally the tweet. Europe would do great. I think Ukraine can take everything back with Europe's help. And even at the very end of it, hey, we're going to still supply weapons to NATO, and Europe and NATO can do whatever they want with those weapons. Is this Trump trying to make Europe a fall guy? That he knows that this project is up, the jig is up, and that he ultimately wants to blame Europe for any calamity that takes place with Ukraine, passing it effectively off, saying this is Europe's war now, this is Europe doing this is Europe, et cetera, et cetera. Give me your thoughts on that tweet.
No, that's very clearly the case. And rightly so, because the Europeans have been absolutely desperate for the war to carry on. They didn't want peace. They refused any talks with the Russians. They still want to kill the Russians. They still want long-range missiles. They want the United States to issue a security guarantee. Security guarantee sounds like some piece of paper. Security guarantee means World War III. Okay, yeah. They don't care. They want to destroy Russia, and if it takes World War III, and if it takes the United States completely destroying its economy, its military, its prosperity in the world, ends up risking nuclear holocaust, doesn't matter. Let's get it done. And so now that Trump's saying, like, you guys are doing great, carry on. I even have weapons for you to sell you. That's kind of like, like when you tell these Ukrainian trolls online who are, sitting somewhere in London and
yes,
pounding their chest with Ukrainian patriotism. You tell them, why don't you put on an orange jumpsuit, grab a gun, and go fight since you think this war is so great.
Yeah.
So this is Trump's way of saying the same. I don't know why he, as the president of the United States, has to act like a juvenile thug about it.
Oh, I see. Right.
He's the president of the United States. He should communicate with certain
tact,
decorum. With certain dignity. I don't understand why he has to. I don't know. Maybe his approach was formed in World Wrestling Federation. The trash talk and the nonsense, and maybe that works for some audiences. But this is, the whole world is reading this stuff. And maybe he's doing it on purpose to get everybody's heads to explode and talk about that tweet while he's done who knows what else that went unnoticed because everybody's losing their mind about his thuggish words and style and people feel embarrassed,
mm-hmm.
Okay, so you kind of see that his point. It is on the Europeans, rightly, but do you have to embarrass us in front of the whole world like this? I mean, it'd be nice for the American people to see their president and to say, like, that's my president. Yes. He could give him that, because national pride is a real thing. It's not just a fresh coat of painting on your house. It's how the whole nation breathes and feels, and you gotta be respectful of that. And he's not. That's where I have a serious criticism of Trump.
Yeah, I think from Trump's point of view, everyone else is a vassal. He's effectively king of the world. And, I don't know if he looks at it in the sense of, well, I need to talk to people who are not my equals equally. It's like if a guy ran a business, some people are polite in the business when they're talking to the employees. Some are not, because from their point of view, I pay you, your very air that you breathe is coming from me. So I will talk to you in the way that I want to talk to you. I think he hates these people, or at the very least, he has nothing but contempt for Europe. And so when he talks about it, he throws out, hey, man, Russia's doing horribly. Their economy sucks. So I think Europe can handle it now. Like, it's a very strategic post.
No, absolutely. I agree with all that. I agree with all of that. But, maybe a bit more class to the whole thing,
Agreed. No, I agree. I agree with you wholeheartedly on that.
He should have his wife write his tweets, probably, She would probably have a bit of that class that he could use.
Are Europeans going to be willing to go and die for Starmer, Merz?
Hell no. But Ukrainians didn't want to go die for Zelensky either. That's the problem. That's what scares me, is because these degenerate parasites that are ruling over us, they have their methods of social engineering to coerce people to war. And then if they're not going to be coerced, then they've already fielded these armies of brown shirts everywhere that just ambush you, stick you in a van, force you in a uniform, and march you off to the front, where you get killed in probably a couple of hours.
Yeah.
But they're doing it. They're doing it, in tens of thousands. And so that's, the fact that people don't want to go to war. We shouldn't be complacent and think that, they're not going to go, because they are preparing these means of coercion, and that's part of the reason why they're destroying European economy. Because people who are prosperous, who have good long-term jobs and enjoy their lives, they don't think about, hey, let's go hate on Russia and let's go kill them. You have to first dump them on the street and rob them of their future, and then tell them, hey, you want some meaning to your life? You can go to war. Besides, everything that's wrong in this country is Russia's fault. So, be a man, grab a gun, and go kill them. And then, that whole train starts rolling.
Do you think that's going to work? I mean, like, you're in Europe, I'm not. Who do they attribute their difficulties to? Do they attribute it to their government, or do they attribute it externally? Because just for one point on this, when Merz goes out, tells the German people, hey, we need to cut back on benefits. That's what we need to do. When you see all of these German jobs that are going up in smoke, I mean, they're like have these mass layoffs. They've been in recession for like 2 years. You look at you look at France, whose government just collapsed. You look at the UK and France, where screaming headlines come out saying they may need an IMF loan because their budgets are just so in tatters. Are they blaming their own government for that? And can that really be transferred into a foreign entity?
Well, you can do all kinds of things with propaganda. And this is why I think it's not going to work. Once upon a time, when we all depended on radio and television and newspapers to know what's going on in the world, it was very easy for them to control the narrative. And they didn't hesitate to lie, to invent stories. And, in that environment, you can blame everything on the Russians. And there are going to be some people who know the truth, but they're not going to have access to the megaphone, right? And so you don't have to convince everybody. It's enough that you convince the critical mass of the people. And then if they're still hesitant, then you stage a false flag event.
Right.
And you say like, oh my God, they attacked our boys in the Gulf of Tonkin. To war,
Yeah.
But we have these conversations now, and many people are hearing them. And so there's a doubt. Some people know that the government's lying to them. Others doubt. There's always going to be a sliver of the population who's just going to believe whatever you tell them, but probably not enough to mobilize a whole society war effort. And also, I think it's too late. I think it takes probably at least 5 to 10 years to organize an effective mobilization, because you need to boost the arsenals, you need to prepare a lot of tanks and howitzers and cannons, and train up the troops, and build up the whole will to go to war.
Yeah.
And Europe is at the beginning of this, and then NATO is about to fall apart. So as they're funding the NATO, they're already talking about, no, we need a European army.
Mm-hmm.
The European army, what's that? That's like 29 countries speaking 20-some languages. You can't even begin to organize a European army. So it's far too late. The whole horse long bolted out of the stables, and these people are grasping at straws. They're desperate to try to preserve themselves and their system and their hold of the levers of power. But it's going to be too late, too little. By the time they even begin to organize themselves, Russia will have prevailed in Ukraine, and then it's going to be very, very difficult for them to start a whole new war somewhere else, or again in Ukraine. But after you had the armistice, after you had the peace agreement between Russia and Ukraine, and between Russia and the United States, maybe even, then you have to provoke a whole new war. How are you going to do that? That itself it took the British more than 20 years to bring World War I together. They started in the late 1800s, in the 1890s. They already started looking for ways to impose a war on Germany. And they were successful in 1914. So, by that time, there will have been a revolution if they don't change course away from war towards peaceful coexistence with Russia, with the economic cooperation, buying Russia's energy again, because we need it. It's not going to magically come from Mars.
Yeah.
What they have now is everything costs 3-4 times more than what we were paying to the Russians before.
You would think people will be rioting in the streets over that. I mean, when that took place in France, the Yellow Vest movement, Macron tried to it was like trying to double the feud costs of regular Parisians or people from France. And the Yellow Vest movement went on for 2 years? I think it had 70%, 80% support of the public at that point.
Yes. But then we had COVID. Then we got a brand new invisible enemy, and everybody had to stay home. And it's hard to make those protests when you have to have 6 feet between. The only protests that were safe back then were Antifa protests and LGBT parades. Those were safe. I'm not a doctor. I don't know how that works, but ordinary protests were not safe. They were forbidden.
They were 6 feet apart, Alex. They tell
Well,
this.
yeah. If you could keep 6 feet apart, but people they forget, and then you could cause such a disaster. The virus would just go everywhere. You would jeopardize public health.
Yeah. I guess the last question on that front is a trigger. So they've already been doing the false flags, as you've noticed. Russia has invaded Estonia. Oh my God, or drones have flown into Poland. And they seem to be setting that up for this potential. What it comes across as, give me a take on this. It looks like they recognize that the Ukrainian military is getting fraught, is getting far more desperate, and its capability on the battlefield is lessening. There might be like a 40% capability at this point for all of the people that have effectively either been killed or has just fled, or body has been damaged where they can't necessarily fight anymore. You can only grab so many people off the streets. So people walking their dogs, haberdashers, disco people who are dancers or whatever. You can only grab so many of those people, and those people are going to effectively die very quickly on the battlefield. Europe seems to know this. And this seems to be, and I could be wrong on this, part of the rationale for why they're now drumming up these false flags. Oh, we're going to shoot down a Russian jet if another one comes through our airspace. Like, these are games, dangerous games that they're playing, but it reeks of a certain amount of desperation. They seem to want to put troops into Ukraine before the Ukrainian military falls. Do you think they're going to be able to do that? Because at that point, you don't have to draft the public. You just put in 5,000 or 10,000 people as cannon fodder. That could be a trigger to try to get, a larger military, to try to create a justification for get further involved in the conflict.
Yes, correct. You're absolutely correct. And this was exactly where U.S. security guarantee was the crucial element in the whole thing, because that was exactly the idea. The reason why the Europeans wanted a security guarantee is because they were exactly planning to put these tripwire troops into Ukraine, so that when they come under Russian attack, then they would call on the United States and say, like, oh, look what the evil Russians did to us. Now you have to make good on your security guarantee.
Yes.
But Trump yanked that from under them. And now I think that Europe, if they shook down all their potential, or all their capabilities, I think they probably couldn't even dream to put 50,000 troops into Ukraine.
Yeah.
So it's completely pointless. There's no way, there's no reason. And then, without the United States, their logistic systems, satellite intelligence, targeting systems, nothing holds together. Everything is a patchwork of measures with which you can maybe blow something up here and there, but you're basically going to get killed very quickly. And so, they are desperate enough that they want to do this. I think that this was the case with World War I and World War II. The British imperial cabal always thinks, well, if we get ourselves into a big trouble in Ukraine, the Americans will have no choice but to come to our aid. So let's just go do it. Let's just go do it. And then we're going to, create this whole, because they control the media. Oh, how can you possibly leave us, alone? How can you abandon us in this hour of need? Look at what the Russians are doing to us. So, they might try that. These false flag attacks that they have been doing in Poland and Denmark and Ursula von der Leyen's plane and so forth, they're so amateurish, they're so unconvincing that I'm puzzled. Are they that stupid? Or is there a different? Here's my suspicion. My suspicion is that by repeating all these stupid things, they are getting us used to the possibility that Russians are doing this. You're thinking like, no, probably this is idiotic, but who knows? maybe the Russians are trolling us. Maybe they are testing us out, And then when you got people acclimated to this, that something might be going on, then you do the real false flag attack. And what I'm worried about is a nuclear device or a dirty bomb going off in the city of London, or in London. Because last September, it came to my attention that all the webcams in London have gone dark all at once. And they are still dark to this day. There's a handful that are still active, like Abbey Road one, and maybe one or two other ones, but literally hundreds of webcams that for years and years and years you could log into and you could see London real time. They all went dark. And that's not a random event, particularly since they didn't put them back for a year now.
Yeah.
So it tells me that they're planning something. Are they going to execute that plan? We'll find out. But I suspect that these stupid little false flags that convince nobody are being done repeatedly simply to, make a portion of European population think, maybe it is the Russians. They're even doing the polls afterwards to ask people, so what did you think? And then in Poland, did you see in Poland it turns out that 34% people think that it could have been the Russians.
Right.
38% think it was the Ukrainians.
Yes.
But that's 34% that think it might have been Russians. And then you do another one, and then you do another one, and now you have, 34% is not a small number. And so if you do that in every country, and everybody's talking about this for weeks, and then you do a real big one in London, then maybe you have galvanized people for war. Maybe there's going to be a more significant readiness to go and confront Russia.
Yeah, I hate to agree with you on that, but I agree with you on it. I mean, the 34%, but that's 34% with massive amounts of propaganda. But even
yeah. Well, massive propaganda is a given. That's not going away.
One last question before I let you go: if they do that, do you think Trump gets involved? Meaning, Europe clearly believes that Trump will get involved. Otherwise, all of this provocation wouldn't make sense, right? So in their minds, they think there's no way America would let us do this on our own. And what's her name? Kalis. Kalis is dumb as a box of rocks. And one of the things that she pointed out, she says, the U.S. is NATO. She's not wrong on that. So I guess the question becomes, does Donald Trump come to the aid of Europe when they declare Article 5 has been breached? We have assessed that the Russians have committed some false flag that for whatever reason, the Russians committed. Putin's a bad guy. That's all we need. And we expect Donald Trump to come to our rescue now that we are in a war that we are obviously going to lose. Does Trump do it?
I think that if you went to the White House today and asked Donald Trump, he would tell you, no way, no how. We're not doing that. But
pressure.
Pressure, exactly. They in 2019, the British tried to maneuver Trump into launching a war against Iran. And a lot of this stuff leaked out via the anonymous organization, the hackers or whatever they are.
Yes.
And, the then British ambassador to Washington, D.C. was talking about surrounding Trump with Trump whisperers and flooding the zones around him, because they knew that he was unwilling. They knew that he didn't want to go to war against Iran, but they thought if they just pressured him and talked him into it, that he might do it. Like he got Qasem Soleimani assassinated, which was one of the dumbest things he's ever done, probably. But, you know, he had there Pompeo and John Bolton. And so that happened. So if a big false flag happened, which will immediately be followed by a massive propaganda push, you know, that those stories have already been written. Mm-hmm. And then they're going to flood through, you know, the British 77th Battalion and all these keyboard warriors everywhere. It's going to flood into social media, and you're going to see no end of stories about how evil the Russians are and how poor the British people are and how poor the Ukrainian freedom fighters are. And that's just going to keep rolling and rolling and rolling. The American press, which is also controlled by the City of London, largely through Rupert Murdoch, but through others as well, they're going to step into it full power. And then who knows what might happen. People are going to say, like, wow, these Russians are really terrible. This is, Putin is new Hitler. I was wrong before. I changed my mind. Let's go. So, you know, we can't be complacent about this. This could happen.
Alex, that is terrifying. That is really terrifying.
Yeah, we have to keep doing our things. We have to keep pushing back against propaganda. We have to fight for freedom of speech and defend it. We have to fight for peace and defend it. And never give up. You know, we might fail, but we can only fail doing our best. You know, leaving it on the field.
Alex Krainer, thank you for this, man. You are
Jamar,
fantastic.
Always fun. Always enjoy chatting with you. Until the next time.
You have a good one, man. You be safe, okay?
Thank you too. Take care.
All right. And just for the audience, Alex Krainer. Alex Krainer is founder of Krainer Analytics and creator of iSystems Trends Following. He has worked as a market analyst, researcher, trader, hedge fund manager since 1996. He is no longer a hedge fund manager, but he did for a while. He has authored several books, including Mastering Uncertainty in Commodities Trading, The Grand Deception, and Alex Krainer's Trend Following Bible. Alex is fascinating to me. Honestly,